In the latest episode, we get some background on what happened after Thomas Newton was taken by the CIA. We also get to meet the heads, well, one of the heads of OriGen. And with Spencer being set up as a proper villain, it seems like the man who fell to earth finally finishes his foundation and really wants to get interesting beyond whatever madness that Faraday can bring to the show through his zany comments and actions. With Dr. Gregory dead at this point, now Spencer's going through his things and trying to fully understand what went down when it came to the Icarus program. And thanks to finding a reel and a projector, he learns that pretty much the CIA back in 1984 tortured Thomas. In between using an X-ray to the point of making Thomas go blind and seemingly cutting off a layer of his skin, they tried their best to understand what came from his 10th patent. Now, as for why the CIA decided to go after Thomas in the first place, well, it's because through his company named World Enterprise, he pretty much dominated the tech space for about a decade. And through his 9 patents before the 10th one, he was making numerous major changes. Now, unfortunately, they don't specifically name what changes he made into technology, but it is made clear that the 10th one was supposed to be the most massive one, since that would have been quantum energy. However, with him writing it in base 60, which is a Mesopotamian math system, nobody understood it. And even now, in terms of the people who currently own OriGen, they don't know how to read it. Now, how did OriGen get part of this? Well, according to Spencer, who's in talking with Drew about it, OriGen came into place because once the CIA took Thomas and took his company, they moved everything off outside of the US so that they couldn't, it couldn't fall back on them. So with that, OriGen, which was just a British industrial supplier, they got all of Thomas's patents, including the 10th patent that they have yet to figure out. And because of all that Spencer has discovered, and because he's the type who kind of has a white whale mindset, Drew decides, with the potential of the 10th patent being so big, she's going to help him get almost $500,000, if not more, and even sets him up with this person named Lisa, who is kind of a butthead like he is in terms of, as we're told before, and as was shown, Spencer's a butthead. He, when it came to that waitress, decided he wanted to mess with her just because he could. He got that Ukrainian family deported, and it led to the child, I think, ending up alone because of some type of mishap. When it comes to Lisa, she's the type who, because her family, that is her father and mother, came over to the country legally, and her uncle didn't, she reported her uncle. It's not clear if it's just because they didn't come over legally or else there was some other part in that, but either way, the two seem like they were made for each other, and they seemingly are going to firmly be the villains when it comes to this season or this show as a whole. Though it isn't explained how, Faraday has seemingly sucked out all the toxins and ailments out of Josiah's body, and he expels it all through some type of liquid that it isn't explained what exactly this liquid is, if it's dangerous, especially since it kind of floats and goes out into the air. But from what we can tell, it's not something to worry about for now. And not only that, it's something that Faraday apparently, once he refills his 4 stomachs, he's fine from. And as for Josiah, well, the way it's presented to us, Josiah isn't necessarily going to be immortal. Now he can live for 10, 20, 30 years. All that was done is his ailments have been removed. As for whether or not they can come back, it's hard to say. And whether or not Faraday can just keep doing this over and over again and extend Josiah's lifetime as long as he wishes, or even make this like a thing he does with multiple people and still stay alive. Again, it's not clear. All we know for sure is that with Josiah being better, him and Molly are now ready for Justin to live her life and follow Faraday wherever he needs to go and have an adventure. And of course, Justin, she's not necessarily for all this, but at the same time, Josiah doesn't want to be the person who held her back. He feels like she has long used him as an excuse, and he's tired of it. He's feeling better. He's able to look after Molly. Faraday makes it seem like he's not going to be worse in a snap, like how we saw in The Last Days of Ptolemy. Rather, he is good. He'll be able to handle Molly, and yes, he'll have to relearn how to take care of a kid again, but he raised Justin this far, so he'll be fine, right? So for the last topic, I want to go into where Faraday and Justin go, who they meet, and what's set up for the next episode. So, the idea is, as we remember from the last episode, is Faraday is supposed to go with Justin to Seattle, but that's not necessarily where they have to go. What they need to do is find the Wizard of Risk, find Hatch Flood, who was the son of the man who was running OriGen when Thomas's patents were given to him. At this point, Hatch's father has committed suicide for reasons not gone into, and his sister Edie's now head of the company, and Hatch has been disposed of because Hatch, who was supposed to be their risk lawyer, it was assumed that with him looking into the 10th patent of Thomas, that he was perhaps trying to sell the patent, and with that, he got kicked out. So when Faraday and Justin meet him, and they show that they understand what the patent could possibly mean, and when Faraday reveals his face to Hatch, Hatch decides as a last-ditch effort to do everything he can so that Faraday can present his work to the book club, which is a London-based kind of social where people who are of high intelligence with these great technological instruments can show off. As you can imagine, it's a social event, so with that, Hatch has to deal with the awkwardness of everybody knowing why he got kicked, and also he has to deal with the awkwardness of dealing with his sister, who just wants him to admit that he stole from the family and he was basically every negative thing that their father and she thinks of him. He refuses, but luckily, while Faraday does act up a little bit, he ultimately shows his technological advancement, which is a quantum piece that fits right in the palm of his hand. And with it lighting up a good part of London, it seems that he's going to become the talk of the town, which for Hatch could mean him getting back in Edie's good graces. And for Justin, well, it means that she'll have to get to work because the quantum power item that is in Faraday's hand, it's pretty much on his last leg. So what Justin needs to do is to develop what that 10th patent was calling for, which would have made a regenerating battery for the quantum fusion item that Thomas invented. So when it comes to the highlights with this show, I wouldn't say any of them are like major, we now have a proper hook highlight, but there are the type of things that show that this show is going in a positive direction after being a little bit rocky for the first 2 episodes. So first and foremost is the 2 Flood siblings, Edie and Hatch, and again, they're not top level highlights which could be considered a hook for this show, but between this sibling drama, the issue of their father committing suicide, and OriGen being treated as it has seen its best days a long time ago, it really makes you wonder, what have they done with Thomas's patents thus far, and how has the company even stayed afloat? Never mind, what efforts have they made to try to understand that 10th patent, and I would even add in, what was their relationship with the CIA in terms of OriGen and their family that led to them getting the patents instead of an American company or even a company that was completely off-grid that could protect the patents but wouldn't necessarily use them in order to make money. The second highlight is just Spencer being made into the proper villain, because before you can kind of feel unsure of what Spencer was going to be. Yes, he's part of the CIA, and from the start that's a mark against him because, CIA's history is not all that good. So following that, it was not clear if he was just going to be investigating into Faraday and Thomas and trying to find the truth and could possibly be considered a good guy despite appearances, or with us seeing that he's a bit of an ass to waitresses, he's a bit of a weirdo who's been isolated, probably for good reason, from the rest of the CIA. Maybe he could become a villain. This episode solidified that he's going to become a problem, and I'm glad for that because I think the way they built up Spence is that he's a formidable problem. He's someone that, if he has as much of a white whale complex as Drew says, that means Faraday is definitely going to be in danger until Faraday either learns how to fight, gets a good team around him, or anything more than just Justin and Hatch and maybe Edie if she comes around. And with that in mind, and adding on that his partner in Lisa definitely seems like she can be as bad, if not worse, because this could be seen as an opportunity for her to really make a come up. It really makes you wonder how far these two gonna go and whether to get this 10th patent, especially after Faraday and Justin, decipher everything. What will they do in order to get it? Will they offer money and just kind of try to corrupt him? Or will they try to kill him, especially with Drew and Spencer thinking this could be made into a weapon? And to be honest, I'm not really sure whether when Drew and Spencer get excited about this being a weapon, if they're going to have it be a weapon that's used by the CIA in the United States, or if they'll use the weapon for themselves to try to do something much more heinous, if not take over some things and make some money. So for the last highlight, it's just recognizing that Faraday's luster in terms of, his quirky zaniness, as long as he keeps getting new stimuli, it can remain interesting. But now with him playing off of Hatch, him playing off of these uptight tech people, it kind of gave it a nice little jolt. And I wouldn't say this is necessarily a jolt that can last 2 episodes or maybe even 3 episodes, but maybe this is the point that we're supposed to appreciate this part of Faraday's development, him going from a kid to an adult, trying to figure out how to talk and everything, so that when he becomes the person we saw in episode 1 that seemed kind of dull and boring, you can appreciate the full journey and not just think of the parts that were funny to you. Because at the end of the day, Faraday is struggling, and his struggles you may find funny now, but the whole point of him struggling and trying to work so hard at understanding humans and being able to communicate with them is because he's on the timeline to save not just his people, but also his family and kids. And with him being who knows how far away from his family and relying on Justin to really get involved and really participate in this, that's probably driving him nuts in a way that I don't think, speaking for myself, I don't think I probably fully appreciated until now. Overall, I think at this point the show seems to have established its foundation and now is building towards something. For with having an established villain in Spencer and his assistant, with Faraday making a notable move that gets us really toward the final goal, I would say if you compare this to other shows that are sci-fi or similar to this, it's still kind of eh. But if you just focus singly on this show, it's definitely getting better to the point where by the end of it, it'll possibly be considered good, and all the little struggles and maybe criticism that we have will be just minor little notes that possibly when it comes to the season review will not even really be something we think about.